Hello everybody and welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. And alright, anyways, let's get into the first story. This happened about a month ago, but I couldn't decide if I should post it or not. I'm kind of a paranoid person and didn't know if I was going to deal with something like this again if I should post about it, but since it's been a month and nothing has happened again, I thought I'd share it. I would like to point out that English is not my first language, so please excuse me for any errors in the story. Here it is. I'm a 22-year-old girl from Bulgaria, studying art in another town. I was back home to my parents' house for Christmas vacation, so this happened a little after New Year's. My parents' house is in a little village near a big town, where I grew up. We moved in the village and we now live in a 2-story house. I was sitting one night in my room, drawing in my sketchbook and listening to some amazing horror stories on YouTube, as I usually do. It was about 2 o'clock and I was immersed in a scary story, not knowing that I would be living in my own horror story real soon. It happened with me receiving a notification from Snapchat that someone added me. I was kind of confused, but still opened it and saw that someone with the username Lappy789 added me as a friend. Now, I would like to explain why this was weird to me. I don't use Snapchat anymore. I just have it on my phone for no reason at all. None of my friends use it, since Instagram got the story thing and we all started to use that instead. I have very little friends on Snapchat and none of them use it, so I didn't think that it was somebody I know. And I don't have my location on, or Bitmoji or whatever it's called, that can give away my location and my username to people nearby. I don't know if that's what it does. Like I said, I haven't been using Snapchat in a while. Oh, I also didn't have my username written anywhere on my social media. Moving on. Out of curiosity, I added Lappy789 and opened their profile to see if they had a picture or something that could tell me who this was. There was nothing, only their Snapchat score, which was about 7. I set my phone on my desk and started to rewind the video to listen to the parts that I missed while I was distracted with the phone. As I was getting ready to go back to sketching, when I got a notification that Lappy789 sent me a snap. I opened it and it was a picture of grass, taken with flashlight. I looked at it, confused, and then went to chat box to type, "What is this? Who are you?" Lappy789 received it, then it said that they read it, and they didn't respond. At this point, I started to ask all of my friends if it was one of them, or if they had given my username to someone, but no one confessed. Next snap came, and it was a picture of what looked like a red tile. I was growing very impatient, and once again, I texted the person, asking who he is and if we know each other. They saw my message and didn't respond. Next snap came and I was prepared to start screenshotting to show my boyfriend. It was a picture of what it looked like a little knob, but I couldn't see exactly what it was. I failed to screenshot it, so I had to replay the snap. When I screenshotted it, I went to look at my picture and realized that this thing was a little closing mechanism on our backyard gazebo. At this point, I'm slowly realizing that this person is sending me Snapchats from my backyard. And by the way, it's not so easy for someone to come to our backyard, as we have a very tall fence and you have to take your time and scout the place around to find a possible way to climb the fence. And it was dark, so it would be difficult. That to me meant that whoever this was, they'd been looking around during the day to find a way to get in. I stood up from my desk and ran to turn off all the lights. When it was dark, I tried to peek through my window shades to the backyard, but it was a very cloudy and dark night, so I didn't see anything. Next snap came, and like the last, I was ready to screenshot. When I opened the snap, I nearly screamed. It was a picture of the tip of a ceramic abstract sculpture that we have out in our backyard. I ran out of my room, not knowing what to do. For some strange reason, I didn't want to wake up my dad and tell him what was going on. My mom was sleeping downstairs on the couch and I was upstairs, trying to figure out how to open the super loud and screechy door to our terrace without waking up my parents and letting that freak know what I was doing. I battled with the door for about 30 seconds, but I managed to open it quietly and carefully stepped outside to look at the backyard. Didn't see anything. I looked and I looked, trying to stay as low as I can so that the snapper wouldn't see me, but I couldn't see anything. I went inside, once again, trying my best to be as quiet as possible, when I received another Snapchat from Lappy789. It was a picture of my mom, sleeping on the couch, taken from outside through a crack in the blinds. This freak took a fucking photo of my mom. As shocked and terrified I was, I still managed to screenshot it. At this point, I lost it. I started screaming for my dad. He came out of the bedroom and tried to calm me down as I was trying to explain to him that there was somebody in our backyard. I could see that he didn't really take me seriously, but he went outside anyways, carrying his gun. My mom was awake now, trying to calm me down as I was hyperventilating, failing to explain to her what Snapchat was. My dad came inside after checking everywhere and said that he didn't find anybody. I showed them the pictures and they seemed disturbed now, but said that it was probably a kid or one of my friends just trying to mess with us. The thing is that I don't live in the big town that I lived in before we moved to the nearby village. All of my friends live either in my hometown or other towns in the country, and I don't know anyone in the village that I live in now. So the idea that it might have been somebody I know didn't seem right to me. I went in my room when I calmed down and checked my phone, remembering that I didn't look if I had any new snaps after I showed my parents the pictures. I had 3 new snaps from Lappy789. There were a picture of our front gate, which I couldn't screenshot, and 2 messages saying, "See you soon. Bye." I immediately blocked the account. I barely slept that night. I texted and called all of my friends, begging them to confess if one of them did it, but nobody did. When I told what happened to my boyfriend, he asked everyone that he knew, but still, nothing. We tried to find the account, but we soon found out that they had deactivated it. There was no one in the name of Lappy789 anymore. I deleted Snapchat that night and don't think I'll ever use it again. The next day, I went outside to look around and see if the creep left something behind, and I saw footprints on a little muddy patch near the place that they took the photo of my mom. My dad doesn't seem to believe me it was the footprints of the intruder, saying that it was probably one of us stepping there, but I'm pretty sure they weren't ours. To this day, I still don't know who it was. I've asked everyone that I know, but nothing has come up of it. I still wonder what their intentions were. Were they trying to scare me? Were they stalking me? Who were they? How did they find me? How did they enter my backyard? Do they still send me Snapchats? I wouldn't know. I deleted the app. I've been babysitting all summer in order to make some extra cash. At first, I just asked around at school if anyone needed a babysitter for their siblings or if they knew anyone who could be interested. I started babysitting kids whose families I knew, but eventually I needed more money, so I put up an ad on Craigslist. It wasn't long until I got a response. The family lived in the suburbs, but what bothered me was how close to the woods their house was, and the fact that they didn't have any neighbors. I got a bit freaked out at first, considering the fact that they were strangers with a cabin in the woods, but I decided to push through the fear for the money. The house was a cozy little cabin, clean, with a nice garden in the back that had a gate which led to a trail in the woods. They had a little lanterns hung out in the garden and a swing all the way in the back. The living room had a large window that faced directly the forest, and during the day, The room was bathed in sunlight. The kitchen was right next to it, with its counter facing another huge window, surrounded by pots and vines and stupid signs like "Home is where the family is" or "In this house, we say sorry." Upstairs, they only had the 2 bedrooms. The attic was a tiny space whose window faced the woods too. The kid was pretty quiet. Honestly, I neither liked or disliked him. I tried to form some sort of opinion, but he just didn't stand out in any way. He wasn't mean or stubborn, but he wasn't a sweetheart either. He must have been around 5 or 6 years old, so I would just put him to bed quickly and then snoop around the house. I've always been curious about whoever hired me, and I just know it's not exactly recommended, but I would just go through people's stuff whenever I felt bored. It must have been around midnight that night when I slowly pulled out one of the drawers in the maid bedroom. This one had all types of trinkets, coins, notebooks, pins, and buttons. This family liked to collect useless stuff and let it hang around the house, and I liked to explore it. As I was studying this little ceramic statue of a horse, I moved around, noticing the moonlight hit its porcelain from different angles. I debated whether to just take it or not. Would they even notice? My chest tightened and my mouth opened. The horse was no longer bathed in moonlight because this huge shadow had covered it and was dancing on its porcelain. Looking around a bit, I noticed the shadow took up half the room. I could not make out the silhouette or what could have made it. It just seemed so unexpected that fear crept up to me and froze me. Someone was at the window. I knew it could have been a bird. That's the rational explanation, and I could have solved all this doubt by just looking up. But I didn't, because what if it wasn't a bird? I stood still for so long, not knowing what to do, until it passed, and the horse was lit up again by the moonlight. I breathed a sigh of relief and put the horse in my pocket. I didn't know at the time, but that would have been my first contact with it. Something made me stop snooping around and just get downstairs. I turned on the TV and curled up on the couch. At one point during the night, I heard creaking upstairs. I know it shouldn't have freaked me out so bad, but I was still so scared that I went to check it out. The house was dark and quiet, and the 2 bedrooms facing each other were empty. Empty. Where did the kid go? Jason? My voice pierced the silence, and I felt like an intruder, destroying the quiet of the night. Jason, where did you go? I kept having the feeling of being watched, so I turned around, fixated on the attic door, which was now opened. My instincts kept telling me to just leave, but my head, now spinning, refused. What if we had an intruder? What if he'd taken Jason? If I had just looked up at the window when the shadow passed, now I would know what I was dealing with. If I just had the courage to face it. My voice sounded a lot weaker than the first time, but I still had to try. Jason? Yeah. The response was almost immediate and coming from the attic. Odd. What was he doing up there? I put my foot on the first step of the stairs. What are you doing up here? It's really late. Your parents are going to be home soon. Step after step, I tried to readjust my eyes to the darkness. The attic was really dark compared to the rest of the house, and I could make out a ray of light that traced out this tiny silhouette. Jason, are you here? What are you doing? You're freaking me out. I finally reached him and put my hands on his tiny shoulders, but he didn't respond. He was just staring out the tiny window into the woods. What's going on? I asked. What are you looking at? I sat next to him and stared out the window at the woods. There was a portion of grass beginning from the house, pierced by trees. The further you went, the denser the trees are, until you discover you were completely surrounded by the woods. Unable to see the sky from how tight the branches closed around you, the forest commenced from the garden and swallowed the horizon like a dark mass, blending with the sky. The window framed this darkness, this suffocating emptiness. It made me feel as if we'd reached the end of the world, and had we dared to venture into the forest, we'd just fall off the face of the earth. And there stood Jason, just staring. What are you seeing? He just wouldn't answer. so I decided to find out by myself. Studying the scenery, nothing particular stood out. Of course, I just needed to pay more attention. Yeah, the more you looked, the more movement you saw. Birds, animals, even the wind thrilled the branches and the leaves. The grass swaying gently in the wind. And then the shadows were the next thing you noticed. These forever moving stains on the ground. I could have stared out there for years. Maybe that's why Jason wasn't moving. There's just something about the night that keeps you up. What do you think lurks out there? I asked him, playfully. Where in the woods? Yeah, my mom. I blinked a few times. That was unsettling. I mean, kids say weird stuff, but why would he respond to that? Was that a your mom joke? Was he trying to be funny? What do you mean? What does lurk mean? Oh, lurk means, well, when you wait or move slowly in the darkness because you don't want to be seen. So like hiding? Yeah, but you're lurking when you also want to do something bad. Just how animals lurk before they attack. Or monsters, I added, trying to scare him. So what do you think lurks out there in the forest? My mother, he responded once again. My body tensed up. That's not funny. I don't want to be funny. Why would you say that? Your mom, that's an old joke, and it stopped being funny a while ago. I'm not joking. Okay, let's go to sleep. Your mother can't be lurking out there. I saw her and she's pretty nice. I don't know what she told you, but she doesn't eat people. She's out with your dad now, and they're gonna come home in a few hours. If they find out you aren't sleeping, I'll get a lot of for it. Don't tell your parents I said that. Come on, let's get down. I'm telling the truth. What? Is she a vampire? You know something was standing out the window earlier. I didn't really care that much about what I was saying because in my head everything had a logical explanation. Jason, however, widened his gaze. Yeah, that could have been her. Stop. I'm serious. And what does she want from us? Does she want to eat me? We were now in his bedroom and I had tucked him into bed. I had my back to the window, facing the hallway, which had now become way creepier than expected. She doesn't want to eat you. That's so great. I taste horrible anyways. Good night. I tried to stand up and leave, but he grabbed me. Wait, don't go. Look at me. What now? I want to tell you about this dream I had. This dream that woke me up, but you have to pay attention. Okay. So, in my dream, I was in a garden and I was thirsty, and you were there too. And you tried to leave, but there were a lot of bushes around and you got lost, and I found this puppet. I hate it when people tell me about their dreams, but I sat there listening, facing Jason with my back to the window. Not because his story was interesting, not because I liked being there, because while he held me there, his eyes kept darting to the window, and I'd seen the shadow cover his face. Because he'd insisted I looked at him, but in reality, he didn't want me to turn around. So I listened until he abruptly finished his story when moonlight reached his face again. Thank you for the story. It was really interesting. You're welcome. Good night. Night. I spent the next hour in the other bedroom, fidgeting with the little porcelain horse. This kid was a lot braver than I thought. In the silence, I kept trying to make out distinct, unfamiliar sounds, but didn't succeed. The house had fallen asleep, and the night had become uneventful. His parents arrived soon after that. I put the horse in my pocket and went downstairs to greet them. Was he good, Keith? Yeah, the best. Don't worry. I studied both of them, head to toe, their clothes, mannerisms, facial expressions, but mostly the mom. Were you good? Asked the dad, jokingly. I hope so, I responded. They wanted to drive me home, but I insisted on taking my bike. I closed the door behind me, but instead of leaving, I headed to the backyard. I just wanted to see something. Climbing on the fence, I made it on the roof of the porch, right next to the bedroom window, hoping to see some signs of something. Anything. The window was covered in scratches, but nothing gave out what had been there. I stood there for a while. I don't know why. The parents had gone to sleep and Jason was probably asleep in his room too. I studied the garden from that angle, then the woods as quiet as a mouse, then the room where the parents were sleeping. After that, I don't remember how I got home. I don't even think I took my bike. I just ran frantically until my legs bled. I didn't even scream. I didn't look around or stop. Just ran until I reached my house and banged on the door. My mother answered, annoyed, and I ran past her, right to my bedroom, covered myself in a blanket, and started typing this. Because while I was watching the parents, something had caught my eye. In the hallway, what I thought to be a coat hanger moved all of a sudden. It had been standing there so still, I hadn't even bothered to notice it, until it disappeared out of my range, then appeared again. This bony, twisted silhouette dragged itself into the bedroom and stood right next to the mother, who was sleeping. It looked uncanny, like a human who'd starved to death, with wide eyes and arms so long they trailed behind it when it walked out. It just stood there watching the parents, then lifted a bony finger and started counting. I stood there, frozen, watching this horrifying show, forever scarred in my head. It kept counting and counting and counting. I was so scared to move that I would have watched it forever. It wasn't until something else happened that made me break into this exhausting run. It saw me. This story occurred a few years back. I would have been around 8 or 9 at the time. My old bedroom sat facing out towards the street, and also happened to be right next to our front door. It was very small, as it had been built in place of our old front porch. The roof was slanted slightly downward toward the window, which took up most of the wall, and the bed could only fit in one way. It was painted purple, not a nice purple either, like a kid's bedroom of course. My bed sat facing towards the door to my bedroom, parallel to the window. A closet took up part of the corner between my bedroom door and the window, making for an unusual space. Every night, I checked to make sure the curtains were shut all the way, as the idea of people watching from the street made me very uncomfortable, even at a young age where things like that shouldn't even cross my mind. Every night I slept soundly. No nightmares, no sudden noises waking me in the middle of the night. Nothing. That was until the middle of the year, during a school break. I remember waking to the sound of someone breathing. I couldn't move, couldn't catch my own breath. I was just stuck. I remember so clearly seeing a man stood in the corner of my room, stuck partially behind the curtain as if it would hide him. Of course, I could see him. He was just a dark entity who stood and watched. After what felt like hours, I was able to get back to sleep. In the morning, I told my mom about what had happened, and she explained it was just a strange nightmare and that I was fine. But the way she said it wasn't very believable. These cases of sleep paralysis went on for about a year, taking me up to the middle of the next year, when I was likely 8 or 9. I remember waking in the middle of the night, just like I had most nights for the last year, to the man in the corner. Only this time, I could move. I stayed absolutely still, despite now knowing he was actually there. I could hear his faint breathing, like he was trying to hide from me as much as I was trying to hide from him. I couldn't help but think, has this man been here every night this year? I remembered the thoughts I had. How I'd run out of the room and scream for my mom, how she'd call the police, how this man would be arrested and sent away, but I couldn't do that. He was basically in front of the door. I spent the night staring at him, trying to fall asleep. I'd say it was around 5 a.m. I was able to drift off, just sort of as the birds started to wake. I woke up and lo and behold, he was gone. The first thing I did was tell my mom. She already looked uneasy, like she already knew. That's when I heard 2 people talking outside. I found out later the people outside were my neighbor and a police officer who was taking an eyewitness statement. Around 6 in the morning, our neighbor spotted a man standing outside my window. She called the police, but he was gone before they arrived. Other neighbors stepped forward, saying they'd seen him outside in the middle of the day, looking at our house. There were no signs of a forced entry, only 2 footprints in the flower bed outside my window. My mother told the officers my account of what happened, and they came to the conclusion that he'd done the same thing last year. I saw it, and it sparked my tangent of sleep paralysis. The streetlight outside projected his shadow, so it appeared as though he stood in my room. This whole time, he'd been waiting patiently outside my room. Who knows what would have happened if my neighbor didn't spot him on her way out for work. Just a few minutes, and she could have missed him entirely. I'm freaking out right now. I can barely type. My hands are shaking, pale. I work at home and mostly at night. My neighborhood is noisy during the day, so I usually sleep with a very loud fan on and with my earbuds in, so I wouldn't likely know if something strange was going on during the day. At night, I listen to music via headphones while I work. I don't hear much these days. I moved into my duplex 5 months ago, and the neighbors on the other side of my bedroom wall were always yelling at each other, throwing things, playing bass music, and just being generally horrible. It got to the point where I moved out of my bedroom and into the living room, but I could still hear them. I got used to banging on the walls and all sorts of racket, and started using my fan and earbuds all the time. I always attributed noise from above to the hoodlum kids next door. The duplex is poorly built, and units are not at all isolated from one another, so if they slammed their front door, I could feel it in my bathroom floor, even though they are far apart. The neighbors from hell got evicted for some unknown reason and have been gone for a couple of months. I finally had some peace. But occasionally, I would hear bangs in the ceiling. I would take out an earbud and turn off the fan, and there would be nothing. I have new neighbors now, but they are very quiet. Still, even when their place is empty, I hear these bangs every once in a while. I moved back into my bedroom a couple of weeks ago and heard the sounds more frequently. Eventually, I decided to investigate. There's a sort of loft in my garage, and we do get raccoons around here. One day I climbed up there with a flashlight. To my surprise, the loft isn't limited to the attached garage. This little room extends all the way back over my place, but it is divided from the attic on the other side of the duplex by a plywood barrier. Looking back in there, I didn't see anything unusual. It is an A-frame type room with plywood panels coming out of the sides, leaving only a small pathway to crawl through. So basically, someone or something could hide behind any of these panels and be invisible to anyone looking down this little hallway. I actually saw very little of the attic, but I convinced myself to be satisfied because I was scared to go back there. Not so much of the boogeyman, but because I didn't want to step on a rusty nail or get bitten by something. Anyway, tonight there was a loud bang. I took out my earbuds and turned off the fan. Then, more loud bangs. After that, I clearly heard human footsteps clomping over my head, running towards the garage. Holy shit, every hair on my body stood up, and I grabbed my hammer and went towards the laundry room door, which leads into the garage. I stood there for a minute, ready to bash someone's brains in or possibly get mine blown out. Standing terrified by the closed door between the laundry room and the garage, holding my breath, I heard a loud crash. Then the back door of the garage, which leads into my backyard, was flung open and slammed against the other side of the wall. That was not only 10 inches away from me. Holy shit. I heard the jangling of my chicken wire fence and knew the perpetrator was gone. It still took me 5 minutes to enter that garage, and when I did, holy shit. I don't know what spooked the person, but they dumped or knocked an entire survival kit from the attic to my garage floor. There's what looks like a dog bed, a plastic bag filled with cotton, makeshift pillow maybe, empty boxes for canned dog food, one slipper, lots of papers and pieces of plastic, some kind of wooden rack, and a plastic tub filled with cigarette butts and some liquid. Thankfully, only a few smokes spilled onto the concrete. Could be piss in there for all I know. I'm afraid to look in the attic to see what else might be up there. I'm waiting for the cops right now. Here is the attic in my garage, which can only be accessed merely by jumping, grabbing a 2x4, and pulling oneself up. I should have taken a picture of where it leads over my place, but I'm not going to do it right now. I've been listening to this person for the last 5 months, and they have been listening to me. Holy shit. I guess I need to post an update. Cops came and had me write down a quick history in the events of tonight while they looked around the garage and backyard. They didn't climb into the attic. They didn't take any of the stuff either. I thought they would want it for prints or DNA as evidence, but I guess that was naive. They were here for less than 20 minutes, said they would patrol the neighborhood, told me to keep my doors locked and call if anything else happens. Call 911 if he shows up. Said it happens more often than I want to know. That's it? Yep, lots of sleepless hours ahead. So this was told to me by an old family friend, Nikki, numerous times as a kid growing up, as one of those life advice stories to keep in mind through the years. And to her credit, I've never forgotten it. Whenever anything associated with hitchhiking comes up, it always springs to mind and probably always will. Makes me a bit ill whenever I think about it actually. So Nikki, who grew up at the same time as my dad, so this was about early 80s I believe, was a young woman in her mid-20s. She's one of those real, kind-hearted souls, always willing to help another out in a time of need, you know? And I can't imagine her being anything other than that when she was younger, so I totally see her doing this too. So, driving into the city, about a 2-hour or so drive out from town, she saw a man walking down the side of the road. As she neared, he turned and, in typical hitchhiker manner, stuck out the old arm and thumb. Nikki, bless her heart, pulled over and asked him if he needed any help. She told me that he was really polite, if not a bit shy. When he asked for a lift into the city, Nikki gave a smile and popped open the passenger door for the guy, who tossed his bag into the back seat and buckled up for the ride ahead. They talked pleasantly for most of the trip, about friends, the news, etc., happy small talk. She felt that they were getting on really well, and even bought him dinner at the pit stop a little over halfway there. She says he seemed really flustered and awkward when she paid, but one of the things they had talked about was money and how he was pretty dang strapped for cash, which was why he was hitchhiking in the first place. But he eventually relented and they went on their way. As soon as they got into the city, he thanked her profusely for the ride and the food and asked to be dropped off once they hit downtown. Before getting out, he asked for Nikki's phone number so he could contact her someday and catch up. Thrilled at the prospect of knowing how her new friend was faring, Nikki wrote it down for him and drove off with the warm feeling of a good deed done. Now, I'm sorry if you were expecting something creepy to have happened by now, but I think this is what freaked me out so much as a kid. How nice everything seemed to have worked out. Nikki gets this crease in her forehead and a funny look in her eye when she tells me the next part. How a week later she got a phone call from her driving buddy. He didn't let her get a word in edgewise after hello and told her that she should thank God that she was raised so nice. Because when he first got in her car, he was planning on R-wording and murdering her once they got to the pit stop. That he was going to steal that car and dump her body in a ditch further down the road and go on his merry way. But after she talked with him so kindly and treated him to a dinner with a smile on her face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't think that he could live with himself after doing that to such a nice lady. And to please, Nikki, please, never, ever pick up another hitchhiker. Then he hung up the phone. Nikki never got a call from him again. When she tried redialing the number, she got a payphone. And so, Mr. Hitchhiker, I know I'm never going to meet you because I'm going to listen to the advice you gave your driving buddy and never, ever pick up a hitchhiker. And alright, that wraps up the true Reddit stories. Yeah, true Reddit stories. That wraps it up. I really hope you enjoyed. So please let me know if you want to see more in the future. Like and subscribe. I mean, you're at the end of the video, so subscribe to the video. Helps out a lot. Until next time. See ya.